Hi guys, I'm Gina and welcome back to my studio. In today's video I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. I have right here with me NerdECrafter's Super Not Another Crap kit. I think that's what it's called. So this is the first time I've actually bought a craft kit. I thought I'd just unbox it together and then look to create something out of it, which I am super excited about, super nervous about because it's something I've never done before. But if you've followed me so far, you'll know that this is the sort of thing that I like to do, is get into something that I have never done before. So let's get into it. So we've got the instruction manual, which is really cool. The little funnel, bowl, spatula, and rubber bands. These are the sculpting tools. So these are really beautiful. They are a brilliant size, so really keen on those. I love the logo on them. Oh my god, the cat is playing with the microphone. And these are some soft sculpting tools. So now these are again things that I don't have. Okay, and then into the fun stuff. So this is the mold for the wings. There's a mold for a base. We've got a measuring cup. We've got the airbrush paint, and then the one thing that everybody is super excited about is this airbrush, which is a rechargeable airbrush, beginner friendly. Hello, that's me. Do not compact the powder. Okay, I think that's about 200 milliliters. Smoosh and stir. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Have we got a leak? Oh no. We'll be back shortly. So it's been about an hour, which is part of the instructions. But one thing I didn't talk too much about was actually this mold. It is actually a 3-piece mold in order to give a character that has 4 legs. So the idea is to gently unmold it after an hour, just on the 2 sides, and then to let it sit for another hour in order for the plaster to be able to dry and to cure properly. Oh, yeah, probably need to do that a little bit more gently. So I have a feeling that the plaster wasn't cured or dried enough. Anyway, we made another one and I actually broke both of the legs that time. So we're going to use that one on this project. So starting off with the mold for the wings, I'm just pressing in some cosclay. The cosclay came with the kit, which is another awesome thing, as well as this armature wire. So it's all included in the kit, which I thought was just fantastic. So I'm just pressing the clay into the mold and then just covering the armature wire in order to set that aside, and I'll bake that separately, or cure that separately. And this is how they turn out. I'm super impressed with the detail. I actually used the mold for some other wings later on in the piece as well. So to begin the sculpture, I'm just covering up the plaster with some clay adhesive, and that also comes in the kit as well. And using some of the Coles clay, I'm just going to slowly start sculpting the shape of the head of the dragon. So once I've got kind of the nose elongated a little bit, I'm just using some of the sculpting tools that come with the kit as well. These are the ones with the soft tips on the end, the silicone tips. On the other end is a ball stylus, and I'm just using that to shape out the nostrils. And then I'm just going to use some more pieces of clay to create the brow for the dragon. And then I'm also just going to add some smaller snakes of clay to add some ridge lines to his nose. And then I've also kind of created some shape around his face as well, just to kind of give him a little bit more character. And I'm just using these little sculpture tools or sculpting tools. These are the lovely little ones, which I think are absolutely perfect size-wise, and just the quality of the tools as well. So here I'm just going to sculpt the eyes just ever so slightly. I'm just using a ball of clay and then shaping the eyebrows into that as well. And then for the hind legs, because I broke both of the legs, which I was not very happy about, but waste not, want not, I'm actually going to create this particular dragon sitting down, but I am still going to use the legs that did break off. I've just shortened them up a little bit, and then I'm using the clay to cover them and then attach them to the body. So now with another little snake of clay, I'm actually just going to go down the length of the dragon, and this is going to create the spikes or the spine of the dragon. So some little spikes down the end, and I will continue this on with the tail when we get to that in a little bit of time. So I'm just pressing in where I want those details to go, and then just going back in with a blade to actually just sharpen the points a little bit, just to create that extra layers of detail. So here are the wings. They've just had one little bake, and then I'm just going to sort of fit those into place. They're not the final fit because I do actually end up by taking those off to fit the tail. And then I'm just creating some of the chest plates as well. So for the tail, I'm just going to cover a bit of armature wire with some more of the clay, and then just press that around. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to follow the same step that I did with down the back of the dragon, and just add in a little bit more of a snake of clay, and press in some of those details to add some more of those spikes. Just before I do that though, I'm just going to bend it into a rough shape that I'm quite happy with, just to kind of bring it round. Got a sort of an idea of how I want the dragon to sort of sit, and there is this tail in place. So once I've baked that and let it finally cool down, I've covered it with some chalk paint which actually comes in the kit as well, and given it 3 coats. And then this is my first go of using an airbrush, which I absolutely loved. I don't know why I have been so afraid to use one, and I guess that this was a lesser expensive way of actually getting an airbrush to try without spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a really expensive one, just to find out that I didn't like it, or that I just never use it. So this is, I've actually used this multiple times already, which is fantastic. So starting off with a little splash of yellow, I really want to bring out some of that undertone and that highlight, and then going in with a little bit of red to create a little bit of orange. And then I'm just going to go through and just start adding in some layers of colour, and just trying to bring out some of the details. The dragon colouring, you would have seen from the thumbnail, but it's mostly going to be yellowy, orangey, glowing kind of up through his middle and on his wings, and then the rest of him is going to be purple. So I'm really happy with this colour scheme and how it's turned out. And these were a couple of the colours that were actually already in the kit as well. So these were the airbrush paints already pre-mixed, and this airbrush just worked a treat. So here I'm just coming in with the black and just adding in some additional shading into around the bottom of the dragon, along each side of his tail, and then around the front of his nose as well, just to give him a little bit more definition in some of the details that we've sculpted on there. And then I'm just going to use some craft paint and just a bit of, just with my paintbrush, to go in and actually pick up those real details. So one is on his horns, the other is on his front 2 teeth, his underbite teeth, as well as his eyes. One thing I wasn't too happy with was kind of lost the spine down the back of the dragon. So what I wanted to do was just bring that out, and just sort of thought, well, I'll just follow the same colour scheme as the rest of him, and just brought that out into the yellow. The only additional piece that I do is just add a touch of gold. The gold actually comes with the kit as well, but it's not designed to go in the airbrush, so I just use a brush and paint his wings and a little bit down his spine as well. So for the base, this is the one that came out of the mould. I'm just going to follow a bit of a similar process that I have done with a couple of other projects. So just using some Mod Podge. This is a mix of dirt and some tile grout. So it is quite grey, but it does add a really good base to the miniature. And just use some isopropyl alcohol just to break that surface tension, and then cover it with some watered down PVA and let that dry. So, and then that just really locks that into place. And then just using some bits of bark and some stones and cork just to build up some of the textures around the dragon and on the base. And then what I'm going to do here is just add in a bit of flocking, which is just to add a bit of grass. Now I'm doing this while the dragon's in place. He's not glued into place at this point, but I'm just doing it to try and identify where he sits onto the base. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift him off and glue the rock and so glue the rock and the pieces of bark into place. Once they're painted, once they're glued into place and pretty much dry, I'm just going to go over with a coat of a mixture of black paint and Mod Podge. And the reason why I'm doing this, which sounds really weird, to paint stones to look like stones, is because they are two different materials, and I did have to bulk that stone up just a little bit with some cork underneath it. And that way that brings these two different textures together and make it look cohesive. So once the coat of black is dry, I'm just going to add some touches of yellow and touches of blue to them in a wash, and then dry brush those rocks and bark with a I think it was a light grey actually. And then I'm just going to go through and add in some foliage once I've kind of glued the dragon into place. And this is just some sponge that's coloured lightly sort of greeny and with a little bit of purple. So I thought, how perfect would that be for this dragon? And then I've just got some fern leaves that I'm just going to poke in around the dragon as if he's kind of nestled himself into the garden, and as well as some other little plants as well. So while I was doing the wings, I also thought I'd do a little bit of a test piece actually and create some resin wings, not rings, wings. and into those molds. So there's three different molds. One's a bat wing, one is a feathered wing, and the other is an insect wing or a fairy wing. So I've done the bat wings for the dragon, and then I've done the fairy wings for the fairy. So that's what they look like. This is just UV resin. I just had them sitting in the mold for a couple of days just in the sun, just to make sure that they were perfectly cured. And then this little figurine is one out of a set that I've got for a half scale miniature, half scale project that I've got. He was just a spare one, and I thought he'd be perfect for this little project. And I'm just using some acrylic paint, just watered down slightly, not too much so it doesn't sort of separate and pull on the resin, but actually this paints up perfectly fine. And then I'm just adding, I really want these to be translucent and not a solid colour, so I wasn't going to paint them like a monarch butterfly or anything like that. I really wanted these just to have a slight hint of colour, and I thought that this would work really well. And then just propping up the wings with a couple of pieces of foam board. I'm just going to add a drop of UV resin into the middle of them. Just let that sit for just a wee moment until it sort of seeps down, and then just set that with a UV light. And then I'm just going to place him into the project just like that.